Hello everyone, I'm Bobtheorc, and I'm going to attempt to explain the Ukraine mess in about 5 minutes, and how our corrupt politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, are just making the whole damn thing worse. So, the first thing we have to understand is that Ukraine is complicated because we're looking at it from the wrong perspective. We're trying to see this as one big complicated war that the media is trying to sort of piece all together, and it's not. The best way to think about this is Ukraine is 3 separate wars that are overlapping with each other. And if you look at it from that perspective, it becomes a lot simpler, and I'm going to explain. So first off, we have the political war, the Russia versus Ukraine, Putin versus Zelensky war. And this is primarily taking place in the north and in the south, where Ukraine, Putin has said, and Russia has said since the time of Gorbachev, that Ukraine joining NATO is a non-starter, and they will go to war if Ukraine joins NATO. And we've known this for 30 years. And the West has been trying to slowly bring Ukraine into the West for a long time, certainly since the Obama administration, and NATO has been encroaching east for a while, and this is really agitating the Russians. And there's talk about Zelensky's talked about wanting to restart Ukraine's nuclear program. A lot of the Soviet nuclear weapons were developed in Ukraine, and this is why Russia's taken Chernobyl and that nuclear plant to the south that I can't remember the name at the moment. And there's also talk about various bio-research labs and other things that, and weapons depots that the Russian military has been destroying. And so there's the broad conflict of the politics, and that's one aspect of it. And we're sort of to blame in that we never really made it fully clear to the Russians, we don't want Ukraine. Ukraine will never be in NATO. We've given them kind of wishy-washy responses, and my suspicion is that in recent weeks there have been some backroom dealings that have been alluded to that we're going to bring Ukraine into the EU, at least, and possibly eventually into NATO. So that's the first thing. Now the second thing is there's a civil war that's been going on in the East, in the far eastern regions of Ukraine. And if you look at it, Ukraine in many ways is a split population. You have a lot of Russians to the east and south, and then you have Ukrainians to the north and to the west, with the far western area being mostly like Polish Catholics. And Ukraine's sort of an artificially created country. The current borders of Ukraine are sort of artificially created post-World War II. And, the western part of Ukraine used to be part of Poland. The eastern part of Ukraine used to be part of Russia. And in around 2013, 2014, the Obama administration, with support from various Western European banking interests and whatnot, engineered a coup that started a civil war in Ukraine. And I know this is a fact because my friends were offered money to riot and revolt. I mean, they just took the money and stayed home. But, this is pretty common knowledge in that part of the world that the U.S. has been meddling in Ukrainian elections, and we instilled this super corrupt guy that turned Ukraine into essentially a money laundering pit for for Western politicians. And I'll get to that in a moment. And so the civil war is primarily in the East, and there's a lot of bad people, involved in some of these fights, and I'll get to that in a moment. The third fight is between roughly Ukrainian oligarchs and Western billionaires versus the Russian oligarchs, Eastern billionaires, and there's a lot of corruption going on, and there's, private armies are being employed. You should go look up the Azov battalion. I won't get into the details because that might get me banned if I decide to put this on YouTube. But there's a lot of bad dudes involved, and some of them are really, really bad, and that's just a whole mess. And it's very interesting that a lot of our politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, are getting their families rich off of dealing with these oligarchs in Ukraine. And that's creating a whole separate mess that needs to be untangled. You know, that 10% for the big guy, all the Joe Biden stuff, that's all true. Except what they left out is the Republicans are in on it too. These guys are all getting rich off of dirty dealings in Ukraine. And so we've created a big damn mess, and this is why they're sort of burning the place down to cover their tracks, because they can't let all this come to light. And so the situation with the oligarchs in this mess is just making the political situation even worse. And so ultimately it comes down to, we've got a bunch of Western politicians, both Democrats and Republicans, who love war and are just creating a big mess, and they're poking Russia. And Putin's going to do what Putin's going to do. He's going to take advantage of the situation. And so that's it sort of in a nutshell. We're really screwing this up. And I'll make a follow-up video talking about the solution, but you have to look at it from 3 different wars. There's a lot more going on than just what's being reported on CNN. And if you don't understand that, this war will get very complicated. So I hope I was able to shed a little bit of light, and we'll go into more detail in future videos. Thank you very much, and have a good day.